Good evening to everyone. Welcome to Borough Hall. There are 6 items on the agenda this evening. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. It will be available for viewing on the Borough Presidents website, brooklyn-usa.org, or on the One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. Web viewers may submit timely comments to Ask Eric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for Borough President Adams' consideration. My name is Diana Reina, and I'm the Deputy Borough President, and I'm joined by our Land Use Director, Richard Bearak.
Calendar item number 150320 PSK.
The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice and the Department for Citywide Administrative Services have submitted an application to acquire property located at 141 Livingston Street for continued use as housing, civil, and small claims court and expansion of court uses in Community District 2. Community Board 2 has not yet voted on this application, so the Borough President will hold off on making any decisions until the Borough President hears from the board, with its meeting on June 10th. Would the representative for this application, Jean-Claude Lebec, please state your name for the record and present the application? Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jean-Claude Lebec. So good evening, Deputy Borough President Reina and Director Bearak. My name is Jean-Claude Lebec, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. Our office works with partners inside and outside of government to drive down crime, reduce unnecessary arrests and incarceration, and promote fairness in the criminal justice system. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the city's plans on the long overdue relocation of the Brooklyn Housing Court from 141 Livingston Street to 210 Joralemon. There's an important relationship between the quality of our court facilities and the quality of justice in New York City. Moving to 210 Joralemon will give us an opportunity to significantly improve the experience of resolving landlord-tenant disputes and civil claims. Improved signage and architectural design will make the process easier to understand and navigate. Adequate space to meet growing needs will ensure that cases are processed through the system efficiently without unnecessary waiting time. And in bringing basic services like elevators and temperature control up to more modern standards, we will promote confidence in the care of our court system that the court system has for its clients. These and other infrastructural benefits of moving to 210 Joralemon will support a higher quality of justice for housing, civil, small claims, and appellate court business. The court located at 141 Livingston has been operational since 1973. The various cases handled in that building include landlord-tenant disputes in housing court, monetary disputes with a limitation of $25,000 in civil court, monetary disputes with a limitation of $5,000 in small claims court, and previous judgments are appealed in the appellate term. Unfortunately, the maintenance and upkeep of 141 Livingston has not kept pace with the growing needs of the court or the community. Simply put, the building is undersized and overused. It does not offer the kind of environment that encourages faith in the criminal justice system. It presents the kind of environment that dissuades people from claiming their housing rights in a court of law and enhances the feeling of wrongdoing for those defending themselves. These are not acceptable conditions. As part of the relocation, in the interim, we will be working through a number of fixes at 141 Livingston. Those fixes include repair work on the elevators, mechanical fixes including improvements to heating and cooling conditions, upgrades to the bathroom exhaust system, upgrades and corrections to the fire alarm system, and 9,000 square feet of new space that will allow the opening of 2 additional courtrooms. These fixes will free up space and reduce congestion while also making the building a more comfortable place to do business. At present, we are asking for approval on a lease that would last 10 years with an option for the city to terminate that lease in the 5th year. We believe that this will provide us with adequate time to implement our plan and to relocate the court facilities to 210 Joralemon. I'm joined by my colleagues from OCA and DCAS that will be glad to take your questions.
Thank you so much. Jean-Claude, if you can have your team join, I just want to have a few questions.
Yeah.
And if you could identify yourself, how are you?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Glenn Pimento. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Design and Project Management at the Citywide Administrative Services.
Good evening. My name is Tom Latito, and I'm the Director of Court Facilities for the Office of Court Administration.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to understand the users of these courts find the conditions of crowding, room temperature in restrooms to be substandard. In understanding and appreciating the testimony given, Jean-Claude, what outreach was undertaken to address the concerns of those who frequent the court in order to better the accommodations for the next several years until the court successfully relocate?
So basically, we are trying to address the issue in two forms. As you know, we first have a license at 141 Livingston until the ULURP is approved. And when the ULURP is approved, we will have a lease that will go up to 10 years. So what we have done is we have been able to negotiate with the landlord that some quick fixes are done as part of the license work. We do not have to wait for the lease. We're going to do some of the work in the license period. So what exactly will be done during the license period? In the license period, the landlord is going to renovate approximately 9,000 square feet of additional space that will serve to undo the crowding that takes place currently. We will also do some quick fixes to the elevator, and we will also address the heating and cooling systems as they exist today, as in repairing the control valves and stuff like that. Also, as part of the license agreement, we have been able to negotiate with the landlord that the landlord will hire a consultant or consultants to develop a complete scope of work that will address all the bigger issues that will be done under the lease. But all the construction work and all the documents for that construction work will be done under the license until the point that the ULURP is approved.
So I just want to pause for a second. The portion as far as the scope of work and the accommodations of additional 9,000 square feet, the input of the court users is an experience, right? And unless you've been there, you won't understand the dynamics of being the user. I know my family, when I was a child, had to go to endure what would be housing court services. And so it is important to understand exactly how this particular upgrade for temporary space is going to accommodate the end user. And was that input taken into consideration via a survey? I know that in my council days, there was this movement to improve the conditions. We're excited to see that we're here, that the temporary space is going to be improved, and in the hopes of moving everything towards a state-of-the-art facility.
Right, so absolutely. Having the community be involved in the process is something that's very important to the Mayor's Office, OCA, and DCAS. We have and are going to be convening a stakeholder group for all of the users involved, and we're still working with City Legislative Affairs on how that's going to be coordinated and who's going to be involved, but representatives from anyone that wants to be involved will be involved. We've also met several times with some of the tenant housing associations to address what plans we know, that, what we can communicate about the fixes now.
Fantastic. And because this is being viewed and recorded for viewing in the near future, will you be sending us the information as to the stakeholders group that would have this type of input, and the invitations to go out, or the different groups that we can convey back to the administration to be able to invite to the table for that particular input?
Yes, so as soon as the process gets up and running, we will be certain to communicate that with your office.
Fantastic. And will our office be expected to be part of the stakeholders group as a level of government?
You'd be welcome to.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And the borough president, concerned of the substandard conditions mentioned, and obviously long overdue to be addressed, if the space that the courts would be expanding into might merely still be used for file storage for civil court before becoming vacant, what steps would have to be taken in order to in order for civil court to vacate that space?
Are we referring to the 9,000 square feet of space? So the 9,000 square feet of space will be totally repurposed and retooled to have additional courtrooms
Okay.
to deal with the crowding that currently exists. It has nothing to do with the file space area. The file space area will be dealt with OCA when the transition takes place from 141 Livingston to 210 Geralman.
So the files, as the expansion of additional court space in the 9,000 square feet that are being used right now for file storage, the file storage will be purged? Is that
Yes, the files have been removed from the facility. to
Currently,
allow-
as-
They are gone, yes, from that space, they've been removed from the 9,000 square feet to
Fantastic.
allow for construction. And specifically, what we'd like to do is, we have at least 2 courtrooms that are being used for office functions right now. Our plan is to try to move those office functions into the newly constructed space and recoup the 2 courtrooms that have been, misused, for lack of a better term.
And that's very good to hear. And what is the expected date of those additional courtrooms?
The construction has been ongoing in the 9,000 square feet. Once it is turned over to us, I'll give you a timeline as soon as we know. We still haven't decided what office functions we're going to put in there. We're going to be moving a few things around. But we would hope that it's within a few months.
So definitely within the current calendar year.
That would be a goal, yes, absolutely.
And as far as the projected date for use is yet to be determined.
No, let me restate that. Once we know what we're going to what we're going to put in there, we should be able to get it in by the end of this calendar year.
Okay. The Borough President understands the architectural engineering assessments followed by designs are required for an elevator and bathroom upgrade, ADA compliance and upgrades, along with cooling and heating upgrades as mentioned by you earlier. In order to expedite the upgrades to the building conditions, what would be required to jumpstart these assessments, followed by the development of the design documents?
Basically, we have, the license has just been executed fully, so we are on top of the landlord to make sure that he hires a consultant ASAP, which he has on board already. So we are going to participate in those discussions to make sure and monitor the landlord so that the landlord is under pressure to be able to deliver these documents as soon as possible so that we can start the work as soon as possible. I also want to say that the 9th floor work, the white space has already been completed. So it's not like it's going to start from scratch. A lot of work has already been done, and now it's just a matter of dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make sure that the functionality of that space is brought to fruition.
So you don't foresee any hiccups, delays?
I think it is our job to be on top of the landlord to ensure that the city gets what it's paid for, and we intend to do just that.
And speaking of payment, as far as any further delays, is there an incorporation of pausing payment for rent if there is a delay?
There is no such, there is no such clause in the lease or in the license, but we will clearly work with the landlord in a forceful manner to make sure that the city gets what it's paid for.
When visitors prior to the 8:30 in the morning building opens, but for the building overhang along Smith Street, there is little protection from the weather. What is the plan to allow the pre-opening lineup to fill the street level, lobby, or better yet, waiting areas on upper floors?
The solution is actually a combination of the things that you mentioned. The biggest problem with 141 Livingston right now is the fact that once people queue up and go through the magnetometers, there is very little space between that point and the elevators, of which there are 5, and on any good day, sometimes 3 of them are not running. At 210 Geralman, the space between where the magnetometers will end and the elevator lobby is much larger, and there are twice as many elevators. So that should allow us to get people in the building much more quickly than we do now. Right now, it's not so much the screening process, the limitation. The biggest problem is the physical space and the poor elevators, both
So
of which.
I'm sorry, what you were mentioning before as far as the combination of the two things?
Yes.
That was for the new building?
Correct.
And the current building, where in the next 5 years you foresee improvements in order to deal with what are people in inclement weather just standing on line
Oh,
outside?
I see. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
We just want to make sure that there's an opportunity here to rethink the lobby area, and in addition, try to move people up for waiting area purposes, so that way there's a humane way of making sure people are with dignity waiting online, as opposed to outside waiting for doors to open, perhaps an adjustment in hours, pushing back magnetometers. There's a space flow issue currently that does not meet the need to have the end user experience anything more than just an excruciating experience as far as,
Understood.
and we see them from our windows here.
I don't believe there's a physical solution. I think the solution will have to be an operational one on our behalf to find a way to have, more staff on the upper floors to get people up at an early hour, and that is certainly something we'll pursue.
I would very much appreciate that consideration
Sure.
as part of the plan moving forward. And if that can be shared as to what those recommendations will be moving forward as soon as possible, we would very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome.
As the Borough President's policy to maximize job opportunities for Brooklynites with local businesses, please outline what steps have or will be taken to ensure inclusion and participation of the MWBE and local business enterprise process for constructing the possible upgrades to 141 Livingston Street.
I believe that the work at 141 Livingston Street right now is landlord work. The City of New York is not paying for the work to be done. It has been negotiated that the landlord do the work, but all efforts will be made to include the WMB program as we use them in our contracts and what will be used at the build-out at 210 Gerolman. So when it comes to buildings that we control, like 210 Gerolman, there is no doubt that all our city contracts includes that provision. But the work that's done at 141 Livingston is done entirely by the landlord at his own cost and expense. If there is work that OCA will do as additional work that's not contemplated at this time, those contracts will be used.
As part of doing business with the city and the city signing off on leases, are there any provisions that the city has explored in clauses that would include 20% MWBE participation or local business enterprise participation via the local law 1?
Unfortunately, for privately owned spaces, we do not have that provision, but we'll surely look into it if it's a possibility.
I would very much appreciate it, and it's city taxpayer dollars that are paying the lease, and so therefore it's the connection to the city taxpayer dollar providing a public benefit that can allow us to explore the opportunity to see that our property owners who are giving a service to the city of New York but paid for can certainly provide an extra level of service.
We will surely look into that.
Thank you. So, these are the speakers. So, this panel is not going to do this. So I'm going to move into the second item, so that way we can have you all remain, and that way we make it easier. Yes. So calendar item 2. Wait. So they'll say that once.
So for speakers for calendar item 1, we're going to combine it with calendar item number 2. Calendar item number 2, 150320 PSK.
The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice and the Department for the Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development Citywide Administrative Services have submitted an application to acquire property located at 210 Geralman Street for use as housing, civil, and small claims court within Community District 2. Community Board 2 has not yet voted on this application, so the Borough President will hold off on making any decisions until Borough President hears from the board with its meeting held on June 10th. Jean-Claude Lebec is here to testify on behalf of the administration, accompanied by Mr. Pimento and Mr. Latito. Fantastic.
Great. So developing a long-term relocation capital plan requires time. By renewing the lease at 141 Livingston, the city is ensuring that court functions will be able to continue uninterrupted while the relocation plan is developed and implemented. Barring unforeseen circumstances, we intend to complete work at 210 Geralman in 5 years. In the long term, moving to 210 Geralman will offer a better space and experience. In developing our plan, the city wanted to ensure that residents of Brooklyn continue to access court services in downtown Brooklyn, the borough's civic center. We examined the portfolio of city-owned property and determined that 210 Geralman was the right choice, given its access to public transportation and its public-facing uses. Some improvements that you can expect will be improved vertical transportation that doubles the number of elevators working concurrently that are available to the public. 210 will have one set of elevators dedicated to serve the bottom half of the building and a second set that serves the upper half. This will help reduce breakdowns and assist in moving visitors through the lobby and into court spaces more efficiently. All new mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment, including a new HVAC and life safety system to ensure that the building is both comfortable and safe. A floor plan that is more than twice the size of 141 Livingston. This will offer better functionality of court operations because similar functions can be co-located on a single floor rather than spread out on different floors. And new signage and information systems so that people know where to go without the risk of waiting on lines or sitting in waiting rooms for hours only to find out that they're in the wrong place. OCA and the city have a commitment to make this a modern and well-functioning facility. The move to 210 Geralman won't happen overnight, but it offers a long-term solution to all of the shortcomings experienced on a daily basis by staff and clients at 141 Livingston. Today is an important step in the process, and we're certain that you'll have a lot of questions about the plan. We are committed to making sure that you and the community have a seat at the table throughout this process. We look forward to working together to facilitate this move and give the community the upgraded justice facilities it deserves. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight. We are glad to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lebec. I do want to ask, the stakeholders group that was mentioned for the previous item, will that be applicable to the 210 Geralman process?
That's exactly correct. We think of these two things as one and the same, and so the stakeholder group would be involved in both.
And so there is an opportunity here to just continue the conversations and have what is raised in the 141 Livingston experience to transfer into the discussions for the 210.
That's exactly right, and while we haven't figured out the format yet, it could be that half of the meeting is talking about 141 and half on 210.
Right. Given the need to relocate so many agencies to free up vast sections of the municipal building for the future home of these parts of the Brooklyn court system, who is ultimately responsible for the execution of the master plan to ensure the target delivery date is met, and when is that date?
So the asset management group of our office, DCAS, will be in charge to ensure that the tenants are relocated and the build-out is completed on time. A team is being set up and basically will be responsible to ensure that timelines are met.
And when is that timeline look, are there secured dates as far as the expected delivery for each item as you progress in the construction?
Right. So basically, as we all know, it goes back to how important the ULURP application is, because that is the starting point for us to develop a program, a more detailed program before monies are spent. So the answer is we expect, so we believe that the Department of Finance will be moved out first into privately leased space, and then everybody else moves into different buildings like 345 Adams and whatever. So we believe that a 2-year period is required for the Department of Finance to move out, and the build-out will take about 3 years, which makes it a total of 5 years. That's the plan, but we are working on the details because obviously you can imagine there are so many moving parts and so many blanks to be filled in terms not only of the budget, but also in the semantics of moving people.
Mr. Pimenta, can you just explain to me, is there an individual, is it the Director of Asset Management that will, at DCAS, manage the overall master plan?
At this time, it would be Deputy Commissioner from Asset Management who is in charge of the overall project. There is no individual or individuals set to ensure that the work is done because we are working on that.
So, at the moment, the Deputy Commissioner of Asset Management,
Yes, is in charge.
who will then assemble a team that will manage the project overall.
That is correct.
And the date, the expected date to start and end, has that been set?
The date is dependent upon the ULURP approval and OMB approval, so the date has not been set, but basically as soon as we get the approvals in place and we know we're moving forward with the project, a detailed outline of the project will be made.
There's a set timeline as far as the clock is concerned, so I'm sure you have an estimated date, taking into consideration the last ULURP date of that particular time clock.
That is correct. So we are not, I don't want it to come across that we are waiting for the ULURP application
Right,
only,
right.
because as you see, we have a lot of posters put up here, and the posters are an indication of the work that has already been done
Sure.
in anticipation of that day, right?
Sure.
So basically, for example, the second to last folder gives you an example of how the quotes have been laid out. We have been working with Tom Bettito and his team to ensure that what we do at 210 Geraldman is not a repetition of what's at 141 Livingston,
Correct.
but an improvement, a vast improvement to the code system, and a vast improvement how we treat our clients when they come visit the housing code. And basically, we have also produced a drawing here that gives you an idea of the flow plate of 210 Geraldman, how vast it is, and typical flow plate of what 141 Livingston is. So what this depicts is basically when people, when our citizens have to go to 141 Livingston, they have to traverse multiple vertical flows because they're all this small. And we believe that when going to 210 Geraldman, the flow plate is so huge that there can be more courtrooms and there can be greater accommodation of the crowds of people that come there, even though it'll be more organized, and therefore there'll be a better workflow that will help the process.
And before you plan out that space, you will have the stakeholders group giving input.
That is absolutely correct, during the entire process.
As far as the pictures that are presented here, those are mock-ups, but not definitively what is the design of what your prospective planning is as far as the space is concerned, because you're still waiting for the stakeholders' meetings to have input into that process, correct?
That we are waiting for multiple of issues to happen. We are waiting after we get the approval, we have to hire a consultant. And when we hire a consultant to be on board to develop the programmatic needs of the courts, the stakeholders come into play because they have to participate to ensure that what we are building is for the future and takes care of all the issues that we have at 141.
The clock started on this application, correct?
On this application for the
Yes,
ULURP. Yes, the ULURP process is ongoing.
and the ULURP clock is 120 days or 60 days?
Randy, do you want to elaborate on it?
So,
Yeah.
come to,
Hi there, I'm Randy Fung from Asset Management at DCAS. Well, the ULURP was certified, so the community board has their 60 days. Right, this public hearing now is part of the Borough Presidents' 30 days for public hearing and comment, and then it goes to the City Planning Commission for another 60. Of course, all of those timeframes can be shortened, and as soon as we get the final approval from the City Planning Commission and/or the City Council, then we can have a ULURP approval that we can move forward with the rest of the steps. So
And
we're in the middle of ULURP right now.
correct. And so, right now, I'm assuming you have a projected date that you will be able to have started what would be certain actions like moving out the Department of Finance.
We have already hired a 10 rep to works with us for privately owned space. Spaces have been identified. Meetings have been held with the Department of Finance to go out to such sites and evaluate the sites. So that process has already started. The process of designing the space for the courts will start when we hire a consultant, which should be before the end of the year, assuming that ULURP will be approved.
Fantastic. So I will put before the end of the year. But the DOF,
The search
Department
for-
of Finance, already began as far as the discussions and moving out and scoping space where they can move into.
Absolutely. In fact, we have identified location and we are showing them space.
So now the magic question, as if those weren't, the clock as far as working our way backwards from 5 years from now, does it begin the day after the city planning certifies the application, certifies the ULURP? Or does it begin the day, I'm trying to understand, are we going to start the 5-year clock at 110 Livingston to expire in 5 years to move in everything to 210? Does that begin at the end of this year? According to everything I heard, at the end of this year, the clock starts ticking where everything is moving in sync to have temporary space for 5 years and then move over to the 210 Geralman space from 141 to 210, correct?
So the answer is that the lease allows us to terminate in the 5th year of the lease. And the lease doesn't start until ULURP is approved and the exercise the option to lease on the ULURP being approved. So from the leasing perspective, the 5th year is when the lease starts. We are not depending on that. As I explained earlier, we are already working to do whatever we can do before that process. We want to work concurrently, not wait for the lease to start the 5-year process. There's a substantial amount of work already done, and we intend to continue doing just that to make sure that we use all our resources to be working in the most effective manner.
Okay. No, wait. So if I can just ask you, Mr. Pimenta, the plan of escalation, right? So year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, if we could just get exactly where you're going to be so that we have an understanding as to how you're progressing or foresee, right, the projection of progression. Because we just want to make sure that there's clear understanding as to making sure that this valuable time you've spent is actually putting you ahead of the curve and that there should be no delays. And I trust in that, but I also want to make sure that we're understanding what is the plan of escalation to stay on target for the 5th year.
We have given it a lot of thought, and we believe, as things stand today, we believe that if we give ourselves 2 years to move the Department of Finance out of the space and use those 2 years to design the space for those other agencies that are moving from 210 to 345, as well as to plan the space for the move out of 141 Livingston, then after 2 years, the construction starts, physical construction starts.
Which is year 3.
Which is year 3, and that's 3 years to do the construction.
And construction, you expect it to take 3 years, or construction as in 18 months minimum?
I think what we want to do here is to seize the opportunity that rarely comes along to ensure that 210 Development doesn't just merely meet the programmatic needs of the courts, but basically we look holistically at 210 Development, look at energy, look at all these other good things that are in the marketplace today, and upgrade the building to serve the housing code, both from a programmatic function as well as from an engineering function, to make it the most efficient housing code in New York City.
And are there any models that you're looking at in other cities in comparison to ours for that type of greater model that we don't necessarily achieve?
I think we have a lot of projects in New York City that exploits the advantages of the new code and the new equipment that's in place. And I think we are well versed, and we have people who are well versed in those designs. I think it's all here. We just need to work on it.
Okay. So as part of, you mentioned before that the new building will have the pre-opening lineup, accommodating what would be upstairs waiting areas and lobby area, waiting area in the new design.
Yes, as we at the court administration have been looking at the initial designs, we believe there's more than enough space to have more courtrooms than we think we're going to need. And that space will be best utilized as waiting, which will again allow us to get more people into the building and upstairs, yes. So we plan to maximize the waiting on various floors.
I know that I went to argue a parking ticket, and the experience was phenomenal and just very efficient. And the waiting areas where, you know, you felt there, you didn't feel like you were using a government agency that was punitive, but rather due process in its truest form of not being so negative, but just a positive experience to just argue what would be a simple ticket, to be able to see that model as part of how you want to foresee having waiting areas in this particular building. And having taken into consideration what Mr. Pimento had mentioned about redesigning so that we're taking advantage of better uses, better design, better areas.
Yeah, so I believe that Jean-Claude mentioned that a couple of the things that we will be pursuing in that is the use of technology. And we'd like to have that counter type system where you come in, you get a number, and then your number will be called depending on what you need. We also hope to have more technology in terms of monitors in the initial lobby when you come in. So if you know you're going to housing court, you will go to particular floors. If you're going to small claims or civil, you'll go to other floors. And just to have more assistance to people coming in the building at every level, and to try to utilize technology to make that as user-friendly as possible.
Of course. And that customer service improvement certainly
Absolutely.
aligns a lot of what
Absolutely.
you're hoping to achieve. And the last question, I believe, on this particular item, the Borough President, as I mentioned before, would like to encourage and challenge what would be the maximizing of job opportunities for Brooklynites and local businesses. Can you please outline what steps will be taken, have been taken, in order to ensure the participation of MWBEs as well as local business enterprise for this process as far as the construction and design is concerned?
That's back to these guys.
So before I answer the question, I just want to say that I'm so happy to hear that you like the business center. DCAS was part of that build-out, and we intend to replicate that model because we believe that model works very effectively.
Fantastic.
Coming back to your question, I'd just like to say that all the work that will be done at 210 Girolamo and at 345 will be done with city contracts, and the city contracts respect the WMBEs as part of the contracts. So that's a requirement for all our work in city-owned buildings.
And so, just to be clear, city contract, as in 20% goals will be achieved or greater. Can you just speak louder into the mic? I can't. Thank you very much. And how will anyone viewing this particular segment of this particular hearing get in touch with DCAS for information on this particular MWBE local business enterprise procurement process? Okay. Is there a procurement officer by name? Thank you. And we can add it to our footage. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So at the moment, I'd like to open this segment to, and I want to thank all three of you, Mr. Lebec, Mr. Pimenta, and Mr. Latito, for your participation here and clarity on all our questions. And if you could just have a seat so that we can hear from the public, I'd like to call up Thomas Williams from BTU and FTC, Marie LaRoche, Flatbush Tenant Coalition, Tammy Brake from BTU, and Hillary Gibbs from FTC. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for sharing tonight. My name is Thomas Williams. I'm the representative of the Brooklyn Tenant United and I'm a Flatbush Tenant Coalition. We represent over 17,000 tenants. Flatbush Tenant Coalition is a group of tenants associated in Flatbush, East Flatbush, and South Brooklyn, who are united collectively to build tenant power in the tenant community. Acting together, we advocate to improve the lives of tenants. 141 Livingston Street physical space is deplorable. It is not a court building for tenants with 14 courtrooms for landlords and 1 for tenants. Not enough space for normal housing court activities, like lawyers talking to clients in the staircase, outrageous. According to our controller's audit on DCAS finding and conclusion, DCAS does not adequately account for and manage the inventory of city office space and does not consistently follow its protocol. For evaluating space, requests nor made an appropriate entry in the city financial management system. Don't waste our tax dollars on $8.2 million rent that was approved at 141 Livingston Street for a privately owned building, and we have a city building allocated to us. We do not want this move lost or mismanaged. We want a realistic timeline. We was granted the space at 210 Girolamo Street, which is about 4 city agency occupied and can be more faster than DCAS is proposing. Borough President, in this case, Deputy Borough President, we're requesting the move to 210 Geralman Street by the end of 2017, no later than 2018. Tell DCAS to amend their application. We want you to disapprove the application with the modification we're requesting. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marie LaRoche, and I'm a tenant leader in the Flatbush Tenant Coalition. I'm here representing 17,000 tenants living in Flatbush and South Brooklyn. In Flatbush Tenant Coalition, we build tenant power by challenging the oppressive system which landlords use as a force for the displacement of the low and moderate income tenant in the community. We organize tenant association, train and develop tenant leaders. We work together to strengthen tenant rights in New York City and across the state. 141 Livingston Housing Code building physical space and condition are horrible. As a messenger and one of the 17,000 tenants who had the experience of being in the housing code so many times, I'm asking you, Borough President, to expedite the move of the housing code from 141 Livingston Street to the designated location at 210 Geralman Street by the end of 2017. We want DCAS to change the timeline of the move in the ULURP application, which is 5 to 7 years, to a better and shorter timeline that won't be forgotten and lost in the long run process. By moving faster than DCAS ULURP proposal, it will save the city from giving away our tax dollar to David B. Stricker, who is the worst landlord on the Mayor de Blasio list of 2013 landlord watch list. This will elevate the frustration and pain for tenants when they have to face housing code proceeding. David B. Stricker is so comfortable long enough enjoying our tax money. Now is about time for the tenant to get a break from B. Stricker mistreatment. As we emphasize in our platform, we state that the move of the housing code from 141 Livingston Street to 210 Geralman should be by the end of 2017. If DCAS does not amend their application, we request you, the Borough President, to disapprove the application with modification in DCAS timeline. I thank you, Borough President, for your time and concern in the community matters.
Thank you very much, Marie.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Brake, and I'm a member of BTU, Brooklyn Tenants United, which is a coalition of more than 15 tenant groups and legal service providers, including Flatbush Tenant Coalition, Make the Road, Fifth Avenue, and more. Our mission is to reform Brooklyn Housing Court to make it a just, decent, and accessible place for tenants. Our overall platform is for respectful treatment for tenants, repairs enforced, and a new building. 141 Livingston Street has had deplorable conditions for many, many years. In December 2014, the mayor announced that Brooklyn Housing Court would move to 210 Geralman Street. $100 million was allocated in the budget for this. DCAS proposal includes renewing the lease at 141 Livingston for 2 years and moving to 210 Geralman in 7 years. This plan is not acceptable. Reason being, 141 has had these conditions for many, many years. It is owned by David Bishka, who was at the time on the public advocate Bill de Blasio's worst landlord list for more than 2 years. The city will be paying an outrageous amount while at 141 Livingston Street. Rent will go up from $3.3 million a year currently to $8.2 million for the first 5 years of the renewal, then $10.3 million a year each year thereafter. 7 years really means a lot more than that. BTU demands that the city revises its ULURP application as follows before they are approved by the Borough President. Create a task force of tenant advocates, including BTU, elected officials, and city and state agencies with decision-making authorities to oversee all aspects of the planning, design, and construction of the new court building and the lease renewal of the improvements to 141 Livingston Street. DCAS recently announced to BTU that they would create a Brooklyn Housing Court Advisory Board. However, no details were offered, and DCAS told us that they had not yet discussed this advisory board, when this advisory board would start meeting. The improvements we're asking for at 141 at Livingston Street include information booth on the first floor, adequate space for indoor security line with preference given to elderly tenants, accessible and decent facilities at 210 Geralman Street, which would include at least 5 HP Action courtrooms, headphones with multilingual audio information about cases and resources, accessible, clean, and well-maintained bathrooms, truly impartial judges who treat repair needs with urgency and respect. We are asking DCAS to revise their ULURP application so that they may include these items. Unless these items are included by DCAS in their ULURP application, we are asking the Borough President to disapprove the application with the modifications mentioned above. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And can we have a copy of your testimony? I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hillary Gibbs. I'm a member of the Flabbers Tenants Coalition. Flabbers Tenants Coalition, we are a group of tenant associations who are united collectively to build power in the tenants community. We advocate to improve the lives of tenants. 141 Livingston Street, physical conditions are horrible. No information booths on the first floor, not even seating in the waiting areas, and no visible help desk on each floor. The mayor's office approved 141 Livingston Street lease application from $3.3 million a year to $8.2 million a year for the first 5 years, and $10.3 million for 5 years after. Borough President, we demand that the move to 210 Geralman Street timeline is adjusted so we are in a new building by the end of 2017. Let us not waste any more tax dollars. Amend DCAS application so we want you to disapprove the application with the modification are requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. If there are no further no further speakers on this calendar item, 141 Livingston Street, Brooklyn Court site selection, and calendar item number 2, 210 Geralman Street, Brooklyn Court site selection, we will close calendar item 1 and 2 and move on to calendar item number 3.
Calendar item number 3, 1150325 PSK and 150327 ZSK.
The Fire Department and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services have submitted an application to acquire property located on Sterling Place, between Howard and Saratoga Avenues for site selection and a special use permit to allow such use in a residence zoning district to develop a new facility for Brooklyn's Rescue 2 within Community District 16. Nan, can you just get their cards, the two gentlemen that just left? Thank you. Community Board 16 voted to approve with conditions pertaining to the off-site street tree planting and the use of the excess air rights. Would the representative for this application, David Harney, please state your name for the record and present the application?
Good evening, Borough President Reyna, Director Bearak. My name is David Harney, and I'm the Chief of Staff to the Deputy Fire Commissioner for the Bureau of Support Services. I'd like to start off my presentation this evening by saying this is a very good initiative for both the Fire Department and the Borough of Brooklyn. The existing quarters of Rescue 2, which is located at 1472 Bergen Street between Schenectady and Troy Avenue, was built in the 1890s. The building is actually 120 years old, and it is outmoded and structurally failing. Now, Rescue 2 is one of the fire department's most elite fire companies. The fire officers and firefighters who serve in this company are highly trained and possess in-depth knowledge on a variety of equipment and techniques needed for complex rescue operations. These are included but not limited to entering collapsed buildings, rescuing civilians from confined spaces, underwater rescue operations, high-angle rescue operations, and rescuing trapped and endangered or injured civilians and firefighters. In recent years, the responsibilities of these companies, especially Rescue 2, has been expanded significantly. Post 9/11 and post Sandy, post the multi-state blackout, the mission of Rescue 2 has been modified to where they are now tasked with responding to potential acts of terrorism, chemical and biological attacks. These are our most elite members. They might be thought of as the finest and best trained firefighters in the nation. The proposed facility has been designed not only to meet their critical challenges, but with an eye towards the future. The proposed 15,261 square foot facility to be located on Sterling Place between Howard and Saratoga Avenue, which is, Deputy Borough President, city-owned property, so there is no acquisition involved. Will give the company the most modern firehouse possible. The proposed firehouse will allow, the existing firehouse, I should say, is only a single-bay firehouse. All rescue companies have two apparatus. They go rescue and rescue collapse. Currently, Rescue 2's collapse apparatus is located in the quarters of Engine 280, Ladder 132 on St. John's Place, which is about 2 miles from their current quarters. By having these two apparatus respond from different locations, it's detrimental to our operations. By having them respond from the same location, it actually works as a force multiplier in terms of the company's capabilities when responding to building collapses. The facility, as you can see here, is a two-story facility located mid-block. It is 2 stories tall. The first floor will, as you can see, it is a double-bay firehouse, which will allow parking for 4 vehicles inside the facility. Rescue 2 collapse. We're looking at placing one of our new high-axle vehicles, which responds to a variety of emergencies. If you recall, back in the fall, Buffalo had 9 or 10 feet of snow in the course of a day. We took all our high-axle vehicles, we have 5 of them, and had them respond up to Buffalo because the wheel well is about this high. But they're very important to us, and they're very important to the rescue company, primarily because they can bring these elite firefighters into disaster areas, or areas that have been flooded, or areas with blizzards, and we can use them to bring firefighters' tools and equipment into those areas, but at the same time use those to evacuate civilians. Very critical for our function. The proposed house has been designed to make it a home for its members, but also to provide a tremendous amount of storage capabilities with an eye towards the future. The basement is a number of storage areas for our scuba, hazardous materials, what we call our gold room, which is our very highly expensive tools, which are diamond-bladed saws, pavement breakers, gas-powered tools, pneumatic equipment. The main floor of the facility will have, again, the 4 interior parking spots for the 4 apparatus we seek to put there, a kitchen, dining room, lounge, a conference room to conduct after-action reviews. The second floor of the facility is more or less the living spaces of the firehouse, which will have dormitories for firefighters and fire officers, as well as locker and bathroom spaces for firefighters and female firefighters, as well as a study so the members can also maintain their skills all the time. The roof of the firehouse has also been designed, as you can see, they're almost exterior staircases to allow for exterior training as well as interior training. The firehouse itself, on the apparatus floor, we've designed, if I can just grab this. As you can see, our apparatus floor is rather large, but more importantly, the facility is designed with an interior atrium where the company can practice high-angle and confined space training while remaining in service, which is critical for our operations, that this elite company will not have to travel to our training academy at Randall's Island to conduct this training, but can conduct that training right in quarters, as well as other local fire companies in the area can come to Rescue 2's quarters and do this very important training. We think this is a tremendous project. The funding is in the budget. Design is to be completed this month. It is our hope that the land use application will be approved over the summer. We look to, working with the Department of Design and Construction, send this project out to bid come the fall and start construction come the spring of 2016, with a construction time period between 18 and 24 months. We think this is extremely beneficial to the members, the Community Board 16, and to Brooklyn at large. Community Board 16 can expect better fire service, but also the borough in of itself, because the location at Sterling Place between Howard and Saratoga allows the company access to the main thoroughfares of the borough. And as we all know, Brooklyn's going through massive gentrification and rebuilding, and that comes and goes with the economy. But the main thoroughfares of the borough, Kings Highway, Atlantic Avenue, Eastern Parkway, Flatbush Avenue, they will always remain. And by placing Rescue 2 close to these main arteries, we are going to allow the company to respond more effectively. Again, we think this is a tremendous project. We're very pleased to present this to the Borough President tonight, and I'd be welcome to take any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to applaud the fire department for finally having this particular site secured and ready for construction. We want to just ask a question, and I'm sure that Community Board 16 is very eager to see a state-of-the-art facility and their particular community be host to it. The fire department prepared, to what extent is the fire department prepared to work with Community Board 16 to identify sites where the zoning required tree plantings that would not be feasible to plant in front of the site along Sterling Place as a means to maximize these tree plantings as a community benefit?
Unfortunately, because of the size of the apparatus doors, we couldn't plant the number of street trees that were required by zoning. Mm-hmm. You should know that this project will be is being built by the Department of Design and Construction, and all street tree work will need to be coordinated between DDC and the Department of Parks and Recreation, their Bureau of Forestry. However, the fire department is committed to working with both agencies and the community board to ensure that the community board's desire for the correct placement of these trees is met.
So currently, that has not been addressed?
No, it has
with
not,
the community
because
board?
no, we know the community board's concerns, and as I said, the placement of trees and really the purchasing of trees is really done as a pass-through between the Department of Design and Construction and the Parks Department Bureau of Forestry. But we are going to coordinate with both agencies to make sure that the community board's recommendations are implemented.
And so, right now, the community board recommendation is?
I have yet to see it.
Okay. Do we know? Okay. So we appreciate the continuation of those discussions to help coordinate with Community Board 16 and their input on those particular tree plantings as you move forward. But we do appreciate that that's not getting lost in the bureaucracy of government as part of their
You mean there's bureaucracy in government?
Never, never. And I want to just express how there was so much more entailed into this particular design of this building. And you touched upon it when we met with you, the Borough President's policy to promote the use of sustainable and renewable energy resources focused on advancing a sustainable future in Brooklyn, and the Borough President's policy to promote practices to retain storm runoff. This site is part of the Department of Environmental Protection's 26th Ward storm drainage area, an area where the city is promoting practices to retain storm runoff. What consideration has the fire department, possibly in cooperation with the DEP and the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA, and NYPA, taken towards incorporating solar panels and/or green, white, or blue roofs in the design, or any other incorporation?
The fire department is, and I'm going to pat myself in the back here.
That was meant for you.
Yeah. No, we have thoroughly embraced green technology in all our recent designs for new facilities. This facility will be one of our greenest. The intent is to deliver a project that uses energy efficiently, reduces carbon emissions, conserves water, and contributes to the healthy urban environment by integrating environmentally responsible practices. The proposed facility will have a green roof, which is going to reduce reduction in heat effect and stormwater mitigation. There'll be solar hot water, which will also reduce energy, geothermal heating and cooling, LED lighting with occupied vacancy sensors. So after a certain number of minutes, the lights will go out. Because I will say, and I've been known to say this a lot, you can go into a firehouse and walk into the bunk room, and all the lights are on, the television is on, the radio is on, and no one's there. It's just one of the things that we're trying to address by embracing all this green technology. We're also going to have low-flow plumbing fixtures, special window glazing that's going to reduce energy absorption, natural daylight, and natural daylight monitors with opera windows. And again, the apparatus floor, as part of the green roof, has a major skylight, which will draw natural light down right onto the apparatus floor. And we also will have a stormwater detention tank, which will reduce outflows into the sewer system. So we are extremely excited about all the green elements that we're putting into our buildings, and we continue to push that envelope with every new design.
That's remarkable achievements. Once this is all completed, this will be leading the charge as far as green technology in every aspect.
I think if you look at what we've built for Marine Company 1 in Manhattan and Marine Company 9 in Staten Island, EMS Station 3 in the Bronx, all of them are really embracing green technology. Mm-hmm. And we're very excited about it, and we want to continue this.
But you're building the best in Brooklyn, right?
Yes, always. Well, the best firehouse for the best company.
Fantastic. And they only waited 120 years?
Well, you know, the budget is what the budget is, and we do our best. And it always comes to a case of we can do component repair to maintain a firehouse. You know, part of the issues, and my colleagues at DCAS will say that the amount of available property within not only the borough of Brooklyn, but across the city is being, you know, developed at a lightning pace. And the city's processes to do that might be bureaucratic, but I won't say that.
I'll do that.
Is a challenge for city agencies and our friends at OMB
Sure.
to try to make that happen in a timely fashion and to address those critical needs that we need to move on to operate as effectively as possible.
And I do hope that we can see the list of other firehouses throughout our borough, especially those in the top tier of most repairs necessary, to be able to see the day when this type of design is incorporated.
What we've been doing, you know, we've started out small in terms of our green technology by working with NIPA and putting in LED lighting and better lighting in the facilities to reduce that amount. We have done solar water heaters and polyvoltaic solar panels in other locations. It really is a mixed bag and a hodgepodge. We have to look at what we're doing in terms of the modernization of the firehouses, really, because it has to go hand in hand with the components that are in most need of repair. That while, yes, we would love to do massive amounts of renovations of utility systems within existing firehouses, we have to concentrate on those facilities that are in most need. You have to remember, 72% of our 217 firehouses were built between 1865 and 1959. So you can imagine the gray hair that this gives my assistant commissioner for facilities.
From steam engines to this.
Well, no, actually from horses.
From horses, that's right.
And I'll ask you, let me ask you a question. Why did old firehouses have spiral staircases? Does anybody know? Chris? A horse can't climb a spiral staircase.
Oh my.
That's why they had them.
No, there's no pun intended there.
No, it's the truth.
Oh,
And we still have a number of facilities that have spiral staircases.
amazing. So now that we've moved from an age of horses, I would like to ask, as part of the Borough President's policy to maximize job opportunities for Brooklynites with local businesses, please outline the steps that have been taken or will be taken for the inclusion of MWBE participation and local business enterprise participation in the process of construction design for new Rescue 2 facility.
Okay. As I stated, this project is being managed, we are a client of the Department of Design and Construction. And while the project will go through the public bidding process this fall, hopefully, as long as this ULURP action is successfully completed, DDC has pledged to follow all requirements of MWBE and all other requirements on job opportunities.
Is there a member of the public from DDC here?
No, I'm sorry.
And so, if, Mr. Herney, if you could just express to them to get in touch with our office. We're supposed to be planning in coordination with them an MWBE participation fair to express the volume of different contracts out. I believe that's for this summer that we're shooting for. I want to confirm whether or not this is one of those projects.
Should I have them contact Mr. Bearak?
Mr. Bearak, myself, absolutely.
Very good.
Thank you very much. As part of the Borough President's policy to maximize affordable housing opportunities by maximizing use of unused and underutilized development rights on city-owned properties, the design for Rescue 2 indicates that more floor area might be available should the site be part of a consolidated zoning lot with the adjacent HPD intended open space and the PS 178 annex. In order to realize more affordable housing, would the fire department be willing to be part of a larger zoning lot with these other city properties while remaining as its own tax lot?
The fire department has no issue as being part of a zoning lot. I always say, I'm not building a 60-story firehouse. So if the air rights from our firehouse could be transferred to help other operations, really other city operations that are adjacent to this and make things better, we have no qualms with that, and we are in full support of that.
And what we don't want to see is dead air rights
No?
continue in the city of New York, and transferring that over to maximize the density for affordable housing is something that we have to be creative and willing to discuss. And we appreciate your cooperation, and if you can certainly mention to your superiors as far as this particular discussion item, because it would help us in just addressing the need for making sure that that conversation doesn't get lost as we move forward with the construction, and then 10 years from now, we realize we didn't take advantage of.
Right.
So thank you for participating with that particular concept. Considering traffic safety, would the fire department be seeking a traffic signal in front of Rescue 2? And if heading opposite the direction of traffic is the most expedient means to arrive at an emergency call, what is the protocol of the fire department given that Sterling Place and Howard Avenues are one-way?
Okay. The fire department is committed to working with our colleagues in Brooklyn DOT about ensuring traffic safety in and around the firehouse. We are still a period of time away from cutting a ribbon and having the members respond. But we are committed to working that as we move forward. And I did some research on this issue, and according to the rules and regulations of the fire department, I'm going to get a little technical now. Please don't call me a bureaucrat. According to Chapter 11, Fire and Emergency Operations, Section 1, Preliminary Duties and Response, Paragraph 17, officers shall require members driving the apparatus to observe the following, Part F, or as they say in the book, 11.1.17F of the Department's regulations. When responding to alarms, use of one-way streets against traffic for more than one block only when absolutely necessary. When responding on a one-way street against traffic, a full stop shall be made before entering an intersection, and apparatus shall proceed only when safe response is assured.
Well, we appreciate you going on record, reading that passage, and we hope that
I was even unaware of it. But
sometimes our rules are so in abundance, we forget them. Mhm. And so I hope that this particular rule is applied and respecting community, because this facility is amongst a greater community and safety comes first. Obviously, the fire department will practice that, but we just wanted to ensure for public safety notification, the traffic mitigation as you continue to evolve in this community, that there is continued discussions with the community board, the Department of Transportation, as you had stated, along with the local firehouse.
You have my word on that.
Thank you very much. And at this time, I'd like to thank Mr. David Herney. I appreciate the time you've given us this evening and your thorough presentation. And I'd like to call up Viola Green Walker, District Manager of Community Board 16.
I'm the District Manager of Community Board 16, and I appeared this evening on behalf of the Community Board to let you know that the Community Board held its ULURP public hearing on May 26th with regard to the application heard tonight from the New York City Fire Department. And with a total membership of 46, the Community Board voted 24 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention to approve the application with the following condition. In reference to street trees that cannot be planted in front of the building, we are requesting that the trees be planted at another location in consultation with the Department of Parks and Recreation and the DCAS. And 2, transfer the property's unused air rights to existing city-owned property for future development. And we are requesting the Borough President's support on this matter. Thank you.
And Ms. Viola, the trees, as far as a particular site that the community board may have interest in planting these trees. Is there any communication back to Borough Hall and/or your city council representative and/or the Parks Department?
We will be forwarding a recommendation.
And we just want to welcome the input of the community board so that if there are other suggestions, that we help you support that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for the air right transfer recommendation. That was all part of the modification
Yes,
recommendation.
yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If there are no other individuals in the public to testify on behalf of this item, I'd like to end this calendar item on the Rescue 2 facility. And we're moving on to calendar item number 4, HRA Foster Avenue Warehouse Expansion. You're welcome to stay. You don't have to leave. We're ready?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Christopher Nesterchuk. I'm the Executive Director of Leasing at the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. So I'm here, and thank you for having us. I'm here to kick off the discussion.
I apologize. We were trying to let you guys set up, and we forgot to read our introductory message. So if you allow me 2 seconds.
Sure.
Okay, so calendar item number 4, 150318 PQK.
The Department of Human Resources Administration and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services have submitted an application to acquire property located at 10300 Foster Avenue for continued and expanded use as a warehouse within Community District 18. The proposal is to consolidate operations from Manhattan and from Sunset Park, where such record storage and information retrieval space and print shop are now located in Sunset Park's Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone. HRA would be vacating a space where the landlord intends to make significant upgrades to result in many jobs added to the IBZ. The Borough President commends HRA for moving record storage and other low job intensive uses out of the Southwest Brooklyn IBZ, where there is amplified demand for job-intensive firms to activate businesses in Sunset Park. Community Board 18 voted to approve the application, with the representative for the application, Paul Brum. Please state your name and your colleagues, should they be, did I say the wrong person? Yes. Okay, okay. And your colleagues, if they can introduce themselves for the record and present the application.
So at DCAS, we're very ambitious, and so we're coming in full force. So just to reiterate, my name is Christopher Nesterchuk. I'm the Executive Director of Leasing at DCAS, and I'm here tonight to kick off some of the discussions. I believe that the next 3 applications are all DCAS co-applicants, and as you correctly stated, HRA is looking to acquire about over 200,000 square feet of space for their print shop and information retrieval storage. They will be occupying a portion of the first floor and a mezzanine. So I'm here really to answer any questions you may have as they relate to the leasing process. But and I'll stand up here as long as I need to. But I will kick it off to my colleagues at HRA, who can perhaps put some color on the program that is actually going to be in place at Foster Avenue.
So I'm Paul Brunn from HRA, and this is Fabian Feliciano, also from HRA. And as was already said by yourself and Mr. Nesterchuk, we would like to expand in our current location. We are at 10300 Foster Avenue right now. We've been there since 2009. In 2007, we came before you and before the City Planning Commission and Community Board 18, and the two actually first locate in that building for a site selection and acquisition. We're here just for acquisition of a new lease. We currently occupy 1/4 of the building. That's shown in light orange here. About 113,000 square feet. We'd like to double our presence there and have another 200,000 square feet. And that's in the darker color right here. Right now, that space is vacant. It was occupied up until a year ago by an appliance warehouse. And currently in the same building, there is a private electrical supply company shown in white. So as was stated, we have our warehouse along with a small ACS, Children's Services, also occupies 20% of the warehouse space that we control. And we'd like to move our trade shops and computer warehouse in the west side of Manhattan, but more importantly, our print shop and Bush Terminal in Sunset Park, as was mentioned. And also we have a building in downtown Brooklyn at 250 Livingston Street, and we occupy 9 floors there. We only want to move 1 floor, which is the basement, where we keep some more record storage there as well. So our main interest is really moving out of Bush Terminal first. And that's really all I wanted to say. If you have any questions for the three of us, we're happy to answer any questions regarding the move and the time frame involved. And as I mentioned earlier too, Community Board 18 already approved our application unanimously 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
I appreciate your statement. I want to, is there any other speaker? No? As vacating space in Sunset Park would allow for investment in the property, and vacating cellar space in the downtown Brooklyn business district might support the demand for space where occupancy rate exceeds 96%. When does HRA project to vacate those spaces?
We expect to move out of the Bush Terminal Sunset Park site in a year from now, in spring 2016. And then following that, probably in 2017, we would move out of just the basement of 250 Livingston Street, because we at this point we're remaining for a few more years in the other floors. Nothing to do with the record store. That's our client services, several different client services programs run out of that building. So those are going to stay at least for the near future.
Mm-hmm. And the Borough President's policy to promote the use of sustainable and renewable energy resources focused on advancing a sustainable future in Brooklyn. The Borough President's policy to promote practices to retain storm runoff. This site is part of the Department of Environmental Protection's 26th Ward storm drainage area, an area where the city is promoting practices to retain storm runoff. Given the vastness of the building's roof as an untapped resource, what consideration has the Human Resource Administration, possibly in cooperation with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA, or NYPA, taken towards encouraging the landlord to incorporate solar panels and/or a green, including as-of-right farming, white or blue roofs?
I'd like to bring my colleague back from DCAS.
You're in the fire now.
Thank you.
That's a great question, and it's an important one, and I think it's great that it's becoming part of our dialogue as we negotiate with landlords. These facilities are privately owned. This is a multi-tenanted building, so there are other private tenants that are not city agencies. And as a result of that, the most we can do is have a dialogue with our landlords, try to encourage them either through lease provisions that perhaps may encourage capital improvements to the building for sustainability. But that's the most we can do. Again, like I said, this is a privately owned building, and we can start having these conversations with landlords and see if we can create incentives through the leasing process. But that's as much as we can do.
What is the lease amount?
When you say the lease amount?
The lease per year.
How much are we paying? We generally try to, so you know, we're currently in negotiations, right? So we try very hard not to disclose what I would kind of characterize as salient business terms. We are doing a market deal. It is in around the $10 range, which is what the market is there.
So I just want to express the need for us to negotiate better deals that can bring or redefine the culture in leasing with the City of New York, right? It's very easy to engage the city in paying a dollar amount to then spur economic activity in the area and then reap the benefits as a landlord. But we tend to fall short when we could be looking at the opportunity to be an anchor for a community.
No doubt. And I think it's important to highlight that this new administration, and especially at DCAS, has initiated a new energy unit group, which is looking very carefully at our existing tenancies with landlords who know how we do business, and seeing what ways we could incorporate some of these sustainable initiatives into our leasing process. The discussion is beginning, and we are really looking carefully at sites where we are either the entire building, which we would characterize as the low-hanging fruit, and really begin the discussion with landlords in terms of what is it that we can do with you, Mr. Landlord, that can incentivize you to really look at sustainable upgrades to buildings. The discussion is being had, but it's not an easy discussion, and a lot of it has to do with what's in it for me. And as we all know, that sustainable buildings have a benefit to everyone, both communities and taxpayers. So just to reiterate, we are having this discussion internal to DCAS. We have a unit that is looking at the energy initiatives, and we're looking to see how we can incorporate those into our lease documents.
So I am pleased to hear that it's part of the discussion. I'd like to just emphasize, reiterate, it's like beating a dead horse. You're better than a horse, right? To be able to understand that we have to do a better job to elevate the conversation. And we're committed out of Borough Hall to making that happen. And if we can move towards what would be giving us some insight as to where those discussions are, it is helpful.
Sure.
So that as a borough, looking from a bird's eye view as to taking inventory as to where we're making those improvements, so that we can start building a culture. Right now we have Community Board 6, who has just piloted with a grant application that they were just awarded to be able to negotiate purchase power for solar panels for homeowners, private homeowners. It's the only one district in the borough, probably in the city of New York, that has ventured into that capacity level, contributing to what would be a microgrid eventually. And it is possible because of the industrial warehouse area that are now home to the Whole Foods of the world and private corporations that have invested. And so Brooklyn is setting the charge in making sure that our green infrastructure is growing at great lengths, but it won't do it based on the interest of the market. Government has to facilitate that as well.
Absolutely. So we hear you loud and clear, and we are committed to this. And what I will do is, when I return to the office tomorrow, I will have the executive director of energy reach out to your office. And if you have additional questions in terms of what some of the initiatives are, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer them. And DCAS is really looking to be a trailblazer as it comes to looking at our relationships with our landlords and seeing how we can be better partners with them in the sustainability market.
I appreciate that very much. The Borough President's policy to maximize job opportunities for Brooklynites with local businesses, please outline what steps have been taken or will be taken to ensure the inclusion of participation of MWBEs and local business enterprises in the process of moving the sections to be relocated to the expanded warehouse facility.
So if... Is this the moving question? Yeah, sure. You want me to answer? I love answering questions. Leave it to a lawyer to answer questions. Good question. So if I understand your question, it relates to the move from Bush Terminal to Foster Avenue.
And Manhattan.
So the DCAS has requirements contracts for moving services, and is my understanding that those moving contracts, those requirements contracts, which have employed movers, are inclusive. So
We know that for a fact?
I know for a fact
Okay.
that we have requirements contracts for movers.
Okay.
And
It's the second part of that.
and what's the second part being?
That it's inclusive of MWBE
That
and local business.
That I would be more than happy to refer that. I can take that question, go speak with our ACO, our agency contracting officer, and see what the parameters of the requirements contract are, if they address MWBs.
Right.
I will circle back with your office.
And is that an in-house service contract that is long-term? So for instance, is it a 10-year contract?
You know, this is, the leasing unit doesn't get involved on the logistics of how agencies are moved around. But in speaking with the ACO for DCAS, I will be able to I'll get the information in terms of the term of the contract, the inclusiveness of the contract, and if you have any other questions, you know, about that, I'm sure we can answer it. But I believe these are requirements contracts that are put out to bid and go through the procurement process, and that's what I know.
Sure,
So-
no, and I appreciate that. I know that having chaired the Small Business Committee in the City Council, a lot of these contracts are set for 10, 20 years, and it doesn't leave room for any improvements to the contract, so that they lack inclusiveness because their long-term issue of a long-term contract locks out any type of MWBE provisions being met. And so I'd like that particular point to be reviewed, and
Sure.
if that can be clarified,
Sure.
so that we have a better understanding as
Absolutely.
to what that contract actually entails,
Sure.
and success as opposed to failure meeting local law 1.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That was my final question, and I want to ask if there's anyone in the audience who has any further questions on this item for calendar number 4, HRA, Foster Avenue Warehouse Expansion. Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. I close calendar item 4 and move on to calendar item 5.
Calendar item number 5, 150188 PCK.
The Police Department and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services have submitted an application to acquire property located at 4312 2nd Avenue for use as a records and evidence storage facility within Community District 7. This location is within the Southwest Brooklyn Industry Business Zone, Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone, an area where the city supports job creation. Community Board 7 voted to approve the application requesting that the 43rd Street streetscape of the property be beautified. Would the representative for this application, Nick Rotundi, please state your name for the record and present the application?
Have you guys seen Nick? No, he's not present. It's always a pleasure to stand next to my fellow colleagues at the NYPD. Nick Rotundi is not here tonight, but we are very fortunate to have two fine members of the NYPD. Just to give you a little kind of insight here, the NYPD is looking for 93,000 square feet of storage warehouse space. And we are looking for that to occupy the 6th floor and a portion of the 1st floor, or the entire 1st floor. So with that, just so you know, on the leasing end, before we actually settled on this site, we did look in areas of Bronx and Sunnyside, and this really was deemed to be the most suitable site for the NYPD. So I'll kick it now over to is Christian, are you speaking? So Christian Olivetti.
Good evening, Deputy President, Borough
Thank you.
President, Mr. Bearak. Sergeant Oliva, Facilities Management, NYPD. The NYPD is proposing to lease the first and sixth floors of the existing building at 4312 2nd Avenue. Currently, the NYPD is occupying the sixth floor of the existing building under a temporary license agreement through an emergency order from the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. Currently, the NYPD has been in the space for approximately 1.5 years as a result of flooding to the other storage facilities during Hurricane Sandy in 2012. The proposed acquisition would permit the NYPD to establish permanent storage facility capacity within the existing building. Specifically, the first floor would be occupied by Central Records, while the sixth floor would continue to be occupied by the NYPD evidence storage, which includes biological evidence, DNA, and bicycle storage. Both floors would contain data pertinent to cases citywide. The proposed facilities would operate generally between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. and would be minimally staffed with approximately 8 to 12 employees. It is expected that the proposed facilities would be visited as necessary by the NYPD employees for evidence records, delivery, and retrieval. The proposed acquisition and site selection would not expand the footprint or the height of the existing building, and no exterior construction would result. As the proposed actions would not result in any enlargements or modifications to the existing building, the site would remain adequate in terms of its size, configuration, and availability of highway and transit access. And it would be remain compatible with neighborhood uses. Furthermore, necessary security measures have been implemented for the proposed site without significantly affecting adjacent land uses. While the proposed site is located near a New York City coastal zone, the existing building's first floor is elevated approximately 4 feet above street level, and the entire building was not affected by floodwater during Hurricane Sandy. The proposed facility relocation was listed in the 2013 and 2014 citywide statement of needs. You can take questions?
Thank you very much, Sergeant Oliva. I just wanted to ask, the current storage facility exists where?
We are occupying the sixth floor for the DNA. The DNA storage was removed from Erie Basin pound area.
And it's being proposed at the 2nd Avenue.
We actually were there under a license for emergency agreement because Sandy destroyed the other.
So the one that Sandy destroyed was where?
Erie Basin.
Erie Basin.
Mm-hmm.
And this one you're going to be expanding, which you were temporarily leasing from DCAS. I apologize.
Good
I was
evening.
trying to-
Lieutenant Anthony Andriano, also NYPD Facilities. So right after Hurricane Sandy hit, we were forced to relocate from Erie Basin. We were able to find and secure the sixth floor, 4312 2nd Avenue, for the property clerk. That DNA evidence storage, as well as bicycles, were moved to the sixth floor of 4312 2nd Avenue. Concurrently, we also lost the warehouse at Kingsland Avenue, which is the other proposed half of this application would be used for the Central Records warehouse. That would be going to the first floor of 4312 2nd Avenue.
So now, how many jobs per square foot will this facility have based on the proposed application, and how does such utilization support the city's plans for industrial area?
So I don't have a specific number in terms of how many jobs are created per square foot. Unfortunately, the NYPD is not hiring any new staff for this warehouse. We've actually repurposed and reassigned existing warehouse staff personnel under the property clerk to this facility.
So under the current personnel headcount,
We're staffed between 8 and 12 members of the service.
8 to 10,
8 to 12.
8 to 12.
And the sixth floor over at 4312 2nd Avenue, the property clerk has been in operation now a little over a year and a half.
In addition to an area where the city policy is intended to promote job growth, Where else did the city investigate before determining to proceed with this location?
As my colleague from DCAS, Chris Nesterchuk, stated, we worked with the real estate, the city's real estate company, CB Richard Ellis, and we looked at multiple locations throughout the cities. We didn't limit it to any one borough. We looked in Sunset Park, we went to the Bronx, Long Island City, and ultimately settled on this location, as we had a very good relationship with the landlord since we've been in there under the temporary license agreement. So it made sense for both operations to be in this one facility.
As 43rd Street is the gateway from the neighborhood to Bush Piers Park, the community board has recommended that the street be beautified through the installations of plantings and setting towards improving the streetscape in consideration of pedestrian environment. How might the presence of the police department further the interest of the community board?
You know, it's interesting. I know, as Chris also stated, we can't compel a landlord to do any work, but we do have a very good relationship with the landlord. We've already engaged him with dialogue on how to beautify, I believe it's 43rd Street? 43rd Street with planting of trees, and I think he's going to be engaging the Parks Department shortly to help remedy the situation.
And in the same spirit, is this particular landlord, has he instituted what would be green technology to the building?
I'm not sure what systems he has in place. I know he does currently have a plan in place to replace all the windows. They're currently older single-pane windows. They might even be the original windows that the facility was constructed with, and he's going to more energy-efficient double-pane windows. So that will cut down on energy usage.
And what about the building performance in regards to lighting, roof, HVAC?
That I'm not sure. We'd have to check with the landlord.
And any discussions concerning the roof for solar panel?
Again, I default to Ms. Christopher Nesterchuk, but no, we haven't had any conversations at that point.
And who signs the lease? DCAS will be signing the lease. And so can we agree that the executive director for the green unit will have, in addition to the discussion on the previous item, a discussion on this item concerning green unit applications for discussions with the landlord to provide what would be improvements to building performance?
I'm going to jump in on one because I'm a big fan of energy management, and our NYPD facilities management team works directly with DCAS energy management's team, and we've actually been very successful in creating a lighting standard, and it's one of the things that's now incorporated into all our leases. LED lighting, which, as you know, saves tremendously on energy usage. We didn't have that opportunity when we went into the 6th floor because, again, there was an emergency need to relocate, but I do know that the lighting in place is high efficient. I believe it's T8 or even T5 technology. Okay.
I just wanted to add one thing to his statement, and that is that on the leasing end, we have a number of units that are part of the stakeholder universe when we prepare leases. So I work very closely with our design and project management team, and they're the ones that actually formulate scopes of work. In this case, CBRE is our tenant representative, and they're the ones who actually formulate the scope of work, but we work in cooperation with the design team as well as the design team for CBRE, and we can certainly take these concerns over to them and see what it is that we can do, whether it's compelling the landlord to upgrade HVA systems. But, I think it's important to know for the record that, the private landlords, it's their buildings, and, we can do the best we can to motivate them to make these improvements. But at the end of the day, it's up to their discretion. But we certainly, and I think I made this clear earlier, we hear you loud and clear, and we'll certainly bring back this dialogue to our Executive Director of Energy Initiatives, and hopefully, maybe this is one of those projects that we can maybe make a small difference in the overall picture.
So I just wanted to share, it's important that there's a lot of coordination amongst government agencies, and so perhaps bringing into this dialogue, since the landlord is a business owner at the end of the day, to bring in Commissioner Maria Torres Springer from the Department of Small Business Services, because a lot of the disconnect between what is the landlord doing business with the city is that they don't know where to go. And so we have to facilitate that dialogue and show them the way as to perhaps whether or not there's financing that they can tap into that they're not all knowing of. Perhaps NYSERDA, an introduction to NYSERDA, perhaps NYPA, perhaps there's so much to the point where if they're not held through the process, they don't engage the process. So it's a very cumbersome process, but once completed, I believe there's more benefits than negative interaction. And so I just want to make sure that we are facilitating, as government agencies, the appropriate individuals on behalf of the landlord to make the deal so sweet that he can't walk away.
Right. Yes. Right.
And
yes.
so I know that DCAS is up for the charge in changing the way we're going to be signing off on leases. We have a lot to be able to manage, but you don't do it alone. You know, our office is your partner in this, considering this is one of your assets as well. And we're engaging what would be the private market as well as government in changing the way we see sustainability and renewable energy. And we can't do it if we're not taking the lead as government. Absolutely. Thank you. The police department looks to vacate records and evidence storage from 700 Columbia Street in response to the potential for subsequent events of extreme coastal flooding. Does such concern extend to the evidence vehicle storage utilization of that location, as it precludes extension of the waterfront public access along Erie Basin? When might NYPD move from that facility if the answer is yes?
Well, the floodwaters did not affect the evidence for the vehicles, so the vehicle part at Erie Basin would remain. In fact, I believe we are renegotiating a lease. We're in, another 10-year lease we were renegotiating for that part. The DNA evidence that was damaged is also still at Erie Basin. The reason being, there has been no mechanism to abate it. So it's staying there until they can figure out what they can do to abate it without destroying the evidence. So that part is still staying there. This actually opened for the new intake of DNA evidence because there is no statute of limitations on DNA evidence. So we have to keep it forever. And we now take DNA evidence for a broader range of crimes. So if a car is broken into now, they actually take DNA for that. So it's just exponentially growing, and that was why we needed to get a large area and quickly because of the effects of Sandy.
How many vehicles are there?
At Erie? Mm-hmm. Oh, I couldn't give you. I don't know that offhand. We can get that back to your office. But
I would appreciate it. But if there's, let's say, 400 vehicles, why not put them in a garage, enclosed?
Well, I could defer that back to DCAS and land use. I mean, I don't know if there is any space in Brooklyn for that or in the city.
Well, we lease garages, we lease buildings, right? The same concept applies for a garage, and I'm just referring to the fact that this is occupying space that we can certainly provide industrial development for businesses to be able to occupy and spur an economic activity that's better use of land for the city of New York, producing jobs. And so I'm just trying to understand, has there ever been a discussion to lease a garage as opposed to open land along the waterfront that can otherwise be jeopardized due to inclement weather, considering its sensitivity to evidence-based items?
I'm not aware of any conversation of that. I do have one point. These vehicles have been there for quite some time. Some of them are for murders,
Right.
cases that are there
Right.
forever. So it's not like the vehicles can move on their own for the most part.
Right.
So there would be, if a garage, it would have to be something big enough that either a tow truck could move them around or, some kind of lift, that would have to be taken into consideration.
And none were lost during Superstorm Sandy?
Not that I know of, no.
And I don't know if, as far as DCAS is concerned, has there been an exploratory conversation regarding garage leasing for this type of?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. One of the other issues that prevents us from going exclusively to a garage is we don't just take in automobiles. If there's a fatality involving a crane accident, well, we take the crane.
I see.
So large vehicles, large construction equipment is also stored out there, again, which is why it wouldn't make sense to just go to a simple garage. This open area actually works well for us based on the nature of the automobiles, construction equipment that we take in. Tractor trailers, we just had a very large seizure of gasoline tanker trucks, and they were all stored out in Erie Basin. So
And what's the utilization of the space? Is it at 100% capacity?
that I don't know of. We're not that familiar with the operation.
If I can get that information,
Absolutely.
that would
We'd
be
be happy to get
helpful.
that to you.
I'm just trying to understand, land is a premium.
Absolutely.
And it's even more of a premium for businesses to expand and create the jobs that we're demanding for the city. But we can't do so if we're establishing land that will only be good for one use, that can perhaps be explored in a much more creative way for housing, for warehousing, and respecting, the evidence that it contributes to very sensitive cases. So I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, so we haven't officially had any requests to move, but I think what NYPD is saying is an interesting kind of eye into lens in terms of their operations and the complexity of their operations. And I think, there would have to certainly be some kind of study to see what real kind of building would be able to accommodate perhaps seized evidence as a crane or a truck or a tanker, and perhaps you have land use that is a hybrid where it's perhaps partially outdoors and partially within a garage. But those are all things that we, as the asset managers at DCAS, can have a conversation with NYPD as they start to perhaps distill what it is that the actual need is and how the space is utilized. We can certainly have that conversation. I think it's an important conversation. But we are always open to suggestions from public officials and the communities in terms of what's the best use of space. But I think the most important thing is to keep in mind that as a municipality, there come these obligations that we have, like the NYPD storing evidence that is not perhaps as small as DNA, but perhaps as large as,
A crane.
a crane. So those are all very important operational questions, and we certainly wouldn't want to impair their ability to store stuff. But that being said, we're certainly always open to any kind of suggestions and can certainly look into it and see what we can come up with.
I appreciate that, and it's not just taking into consideration that particular site, but coupled with what would be the toe pound areas, right? You have an abundance of these vast open spaces occupying what is industrial manufacturing land, where we can continue to spur economic activity and consolidate a lot of this, if possible, looking at it through the study, as you mentioned. So if a study is something that we can certainly embark on, I would like to officially have that as a request, back as an opportunity to start this process of engagement. I appreciate your openness and suggestion. It is the...
Hopefully it's not career ending, but no, I'm just...
I have your back.
Okay, good.
It was my request.
I think it's a very fair request, and it's something that, from an asset management perspective, it's something that should be done regardless whether it comes from a public official.
I appreciate that very much, and it's time that we start doing things differently. It is the Borough President's policy to maximize job opportunities for Brooklynites with local businesses. Please outline what steps have been or will be taken to ensure inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprise and local business enterprise in the process of moving sections to be relocated to the expanded warehouse facility. And I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to afford you the opportunity to say it.
I'd just like to reiterate what I said earlier, which is that I will circle back with your office to give you additional details on the requirements contract for the moving services, and hopefully that will answer your questions at a later time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And are there any further questions or comments from the audience on this item? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. This item is closed, and we are moving on to our last item, calendar item number 6.
Calendar item number 6, 150305 PCK.
The New York County District Attorney and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services have submitted an application to acquire property located at 4312 2nd Avenue for use as a record storage facility within Community District 7. Community Board 7 voted to approve the application requesting that the 43rd Street scape of the property be beautified. Would the representative for this application, Darrell Taylor, please state your name for the record and present the application?
Well, I could kick it off to him, but since I'm on a roll,
Absolutely.
I'm the luckiest guy at DCAS tonight. The DA, the Manhattan DA's office is looking to acquire about 95,000 square feet for their records, and this is an important use because they need to access these records rapidly before and after settlement discussions or hearings or trials. So I'll kick it off to my colleague from the Manhattan DA's office, and if you have any other questions, I'll answer them as they come along.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Taylor. I'm the Director of Operations for...
Mr. Taylor, put the mic right in front of you so that
Sorry.
way, yes, no, absolutely.
Is that better?
Yep.
My name is Darrell Taylor, the Director of Operations for the New York County District Attorney's Office. I would like to thank Deputy Borough
District Attorney Thompson?
Huh?
District Attorney Thompson?
No.
Manhattan?
Manhattan, yes.
Got it, okay.
Sorry. I would like to thank Deputy Borough President Diana Renner, Director of Land Use Richard Bearak, and the Borough Board for providing this opportunity to present our request. I would also like to thank Community Board 7 for approving our requests early last month. We are presenting this evening under ULURP application 150305 for the site selection and acquisition of record storage space at 4312 2nd Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. 4312 2nd Avenue is a 6-story facility that is privately owned. It's a privately owned property zoned in M3-1 located within Brooklyn Community Board 7 in the Sunset Park neighborhood. The New York County District Attorney's Office, which I will refer to as Danny for this presentation, in conjunction with DCAS, Department of Citywide Administration, is seeking a site selection and acquisition of storing document evidence, case files, and general files at 4312 2nd Avenue in Sunset Park. Danny currently has a license agreement to use 73,000 square feet of storage space on the 5th floor in the proposed building for the past year and a half, and would like to continue using that site for a longer term beyond the license agreement. Furthermore, the New York County District Attorney's Office would like to acquire an additional 19,250 square feet of space on the 2nd floor to store future files and evidence. A total of 92,250 square feet of space is being requested to the city planning, community board, and your office, Brooklyn Borough President's office. The New York County District Attorney is one of the largest and busiest district attorney's offices nationally. Our office retains an average of 250 boxes of case records a week from various trial bureaus and specialized units in support of all criminal cases in Manhattan. The Records Management Department is located in Manhattan Criminal Court, 100 Center Street, in Lower Manhattan, but because of space restraints, most of the files are now stored at 4312 2nd Avenue. There is insufficient space in our main office to store thousands of cases that we must retain. Danny requires a safe and secured storage facility to ensure that case-related files and records are protected. More importantly, it is critical for these files to be available for prompt retrieval. This includes a facility that can accommodate access for delivery vehicles without disturbing the area, have high elevations to prevent any damage to case files by storms or flooding, for example, Hurricane Sandy, and be able to accommodate our security system and is expansive enough to accommodate a huge influx of records and files. In 2012, Danny and DCAS were asked to vacate 90,000 square feet of lease space at 20 J Street. And with the assistance of DCAS and OMB, my office relocated to 4312 2nd Avenue. When Danny and DCAS selected 4312 2nd Avenue, the building had been vacant for approximately 5 years before Danny and DCAS agreed to signing the lease agreement with the landlord. In the past, the space was used by the landlord's import business for storage of merchandise. However, over the years, the landlord had to largely outsource his operations, and therefore the building remained vacant. The open floor plate was ideal for our needs. It was the quickest and most efficient use of the space and allowed my office and DCAS to vacate our lease space within city deadlines. Danny's proposal for the second and fifth floors of 4312 2nd Avenue is consistent with number 3 and item number 4 of the primary goals of section 197A of the New York City Charter. That is to preserve existing industrial, commercial, residential use and the fabric in the area east of First Avenue, and to encourage development that places a minimum environmental burden on adjacent residential communities. The proposed building has been a storage facility for a number of years. Our presence has not had a negative impact or disruption in the neighborhood due to our storage use. Furthermore, our current presence does not pose any threat to the area's manufacturing or maritime use, or will it pose any threat in the future. About a month ago, on May 6th, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office presented to Community Board 7 and was unanimously approved our request. My office is here today to seek approval from Brooklyn Borough President's Office and the Borough Board. With the Community Board and the Borough Board's approval, we hope to be able to gather support to acquire city planning approval on our requests. On behalf of the New York County District Attorney's Office, I respectfully ask that you approve our request. Thank you.
Thank you. So as I had asked of NYPD, how many jobs per square foot will this facility have based on the proposed application, and how does such utilization support the city's plan for industrial area?
So I heard some of the previous answers, and I think that in our office, we have not increased staffing. What we believe is that we were able to help the landlord maintain some of the staffing since the office, the building was pretty much empty. He was able to retain some of the people who live in the neighborhood as employees in maintaining the building. So building maintenance, a lot of those folks may have been without jobs if NYPD, if the Manhattan DA's office and other agencies didn't lease the space.
So I just want the record to reflect, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge demand for in manufacturing industrial buildings like this.
Yes.
That your statement claims doesn't negatively impact, and it does, because for every paper or box of paper that we store in space like this are jobs not created.
Right.
And so, you know, although I can respect the need for this type of usage, we just want to be careful how we describe the situation at the industrial development areas for our business zones.
Right.
Because we don't value the business zones, therefore we create warehouse, therefore it takes away from the potential of economic activity that creates the living wages that we are all calling for, and that doesn't happen out of thin air.
Right.
I just want to also express there's a need for digitizing paperwork. Is this particular volume of cubic feet of paper ever going to get digitized?
I can tell you what I know. It's a tough challenge because there has to be a collaboration with the courts, has to be a collaboration with all the DA's offices, and I know that challenge has begun, but there's a lot of legislation which I'm not familiar with that really impacts how cases are retained. So I can get back to you with more information on that.
I would
but
appreciate
I do know that discussions have begun, but it's going to be a challenge.
And I can concur with that challenge because in Borough Hall, we're trying to digitize maps that date back to late 1800s. And it's one of those actions that if we don't start now, we'll never get them done.
Right.
So therefore, the act of beginning that particular action of digitizing with the help of DORIS, which is the Department of Retention, record keeping, so on and so forth, is how we were able to begin. And I understand that this particular building is now becoming the mecca of storage of paper.
Right.
When we live in the 21st century of technology.
Right.
So I needed to stress that because it's very difficult to accept the fact that we're still storing paper, taking away the potential for job creation.
Right.
In addition to an area where the city policy is intended to promote job growth, well, where else did the city investigate before determining to proceed at this location? Considering you started out with, similar to NYPD, temporary. I always claim nothing is temporary with government.
Right. We, DCAS took the lead. We looked at space in Canarsie. We looked at space in Sunset Park. Some of the space in Sunset Park was pretty full. Bush Terminal comes to mind, but we went to Bush Terminal. There was an adequate space. This building offered the best solution for us. All of our storage is on one floor. And the proximity to the office was the best location for us, and that's why we selected this space.
And there's no location in Manhattan?
I can tell you DCAS looked high and low, but
it zoned itself out of storage facilities and
Yes.
manufacturing land, and so therefore,
Yes.
right? And this is the price we pay
Yes.
for zoning ourselves out of industry. So You don't have to answer that.
Thank you.
Richard wanted me to say, how about Jersey City? We're going to barge paper out there, right? I want to ask the previous calendar item with 43rd Street being the gateway from the neighborhood to Bush Pierce Park. The community board has recommended that the street be beautified
Yes.
through the installations of plantings and setting towards improving the streetscape in consideration of a pedestrian environment. How might the presence of New York County District Attorney further the interest of Community Board 7, understanding that a lot of the collection of settlement money occurs through New York County District Attorney's Office, and the control of funding that can be reinvested in Brooklyn, in particular this particular site of interest?
I think it's a very good question. I heard previously some of the answers, but after the community board meeting earlier last month, I spoke to Chris, who I believe works for you, I believe, and Chris Summing. And we thought it was an excellent idea, and we support it. We told Community Board 7 that we would work with DCAS, and they're really taking the lead to encourage the landlord and other city agencies to plant trees and beautify, and probably include lights and better lighting in the street.
And so if I may, seating is an issue, planting, forestry is an issue, lights, as you mentioned,
Yes.
is an issue, and these are many of the components that settlement money that district attorney offices can help support, considering we're going to be hosting paper in the neighborhood of Sunset Park, to be able to be a good neighbor and invested in people in a different way.
I will say this, I can't speak about the settlement money, but I can certainly tell you that I went back to my office, and everyone that I spoke to, the executive has embraced the idea of helping in improving that street. So if our request is approved, we will work closely with DCAS to make that happen.
I would very much appreciate that, and
I do have to mention that the landlord has to buy in also, so we're going to have to work closely with DCAS because it's going to be part of the negotiation component here. So,
so I don't want it to get lost because we have to activate that street, considering there's no life, considering the use, right? So everything is impacted. So the no lighting, no people,
trees,
no interaction
seating.
in and out of the building, no trees, just leaves for an element other than anything good from happening.
Right.
And you're in the law enforcement
Yeah,
business.
no, we appreciate that. Yep.
It is the Borough President's policy to maximize job opportunities for Brooklynites with local businesses. Please outline what steps have been or will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of MWBE and local business enterprise in the process of moving the sections to be relocated to the expanded warehouse facility. And clearly, DCAS will be taking care of that.
Yes, that is the correct answer. We will work closely with DCAS to make sure that's taken care of. The landlord is going to be responsible for some of that and for the build-out as part of the agreement. And we have an idea of what we'll need. The good news is that we're in the space, and we just need some shelving, so there's not a lot of purchasing that needs to be done. So.
And as far as the moving contract, we will follow up on that particular item.
Yes.
Excellent. If there are no other comments or individuals interested in participating for this particular calendar item, I'd like to close this item. Thank you very much for coming to testify.
Thank you.
At this moment, I'd like to close all calendar items. Thank the public for participating this evening. The Borough President will review the applications that we heard today and will soon submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission. I would like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on this item. The hearing is now, before I adjourn, I'd like to thank Joe Frizzell as well as Anthony Drummond for assisting us with this hearing this evening. And I would like to end this hearing with reminding viewers that the viewing of this particular hearing is available on the website, that for timely comments can be submitted by email to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. This hearing is now adjourned.